It's midday. Good afternoon and welcome to the program The Podium. I am Julian Kuruma. We kickstart the program with our quote of the day, and it's from Laurie Descheny, an inspirational speaker. And it says, "You don't have to be positive all the time. It's perfectly okay to feel sad, angry, annoyed, frustrated, scared, and anxious. Having feelings don't make you a negative person, it makes you human. So it's okay to feel something once in a while." Coming up on the program this afternoon, World Health Organization, Ministry of Health and Sanitation, and other partners discuss the dangers tagged with the increasing intake of antibiotic drugs. And Conference of Parties 27th conference ends in Cairo with the setting up of a global fund for loss and damage targeting risk countries like Sierra Leone. Ministry of Agriculture and United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization launch a national action plan for the United Nations Decade of Family Farming 2021 to 2030. And lastly, the third CSO's media retreat kick off this Thursday in Kenema. These issues and more will be dealt with in the next 1 hour of the podium. We invite you to follow the program, lend us your attention, and send text message to the mobile numbers displayed right there on your screen. Find us also on Facebook at SLBC Channel 31. This is the podium. Thank you very much for continuing with the program, The Podium. Let's start with our first issue. The Ministry of Agriculture and the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has launched a national action plan for the United Nations Decade of Family Farming 2021 to 2030. The plan, among other things, will restore family farming, which was long practiced by generations then, and it is expected to increase sustainable food production, profitability, and income level that aims at addressing food security in the country. Old as the human race is, the practice of family farming, which when practiced prevented past generation from the hunger that we currently face in our generation. Even though farming has been commercialized with improved technologies, the world is still experiencing immense famine. The reason the United Nations decided to revive the practice of family farming. Now, Frank Weber is the National Coordinator Consultant, National Action Plan for the United Nations Decade of Family Farming 2021 to 2030. He's here this afternoon to give us an extensive idea on how this family farming will be implemented and what exactly they'll focus on. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon.
Now, let's go directly to this handbook that you gave me this afternoon. I see one of the areas that you pinpointed is to be able to support youth and ensure generational sustainability, one of the areas in your area of work. Exactly, it is good that we are reverting back to family farming. Like I described in my intro, it is something that used to sustain us, but now that we have such improved technologies, we are still faced with farming. So how exactly are you, or is this initiative going to fund youth to continue the sustainability of food and production in Sierra Leone?
Thank you very much, because this document is not just designed by us. We did a series of consultation with the youths. I mean, we cut across countries, especially the youth, women, and others. So this is exactly what they want. What they want is what we have put in the document, and we think is very important. Yeah, I know there is something like high migration, let's say the labor force of youth moving from the villages to the cities and all, but I can also tell you that there is serious labor in those communities, because I've gone length and breadth of the country, and I realized that especially in the hard to reach areas, there are still youths there that are really committed to food production. I think the challenge here is how best we can use them to increase and improve on their production, so they'll be able to earn income from what they are doing. And this plan really is for them, and I'm sure we have let's say from now to January we'll be having the implementation plan, and we have donors like we have organizations like let's say FAO, even the Ministry of Agriculture is fully on board, because this is their document. They hired me as a consultant to see how I can come up with this national action plan. And with that, I think we have a lot to do, and I'm sure we are on track to do it, because Sierra Leone, I always tell people, is a virgin ground for food production. Looking at the different ecologies that exist within the country as a whole, and as well as the labor force. Like for instance, if you look at Pillar 2, you realize, let's say Pillar 3 to be specific, that talks about gender. Women farmers, like, let's say, do up to 70% of the farm labor, in those communities, but they are not benefiting from what they're doing. So we think there's going to be a complete a change in the food system, because we are driving towards a new food system. That's why the UN decided that the focus will be on family farming, because they produce 80% of what we consume, but yet still they are living in poverty. So what can we do to alleviate their suffering within those communities? And this document is there if you go through it, you realize that it has a lot of solutions that can be done to solve those problems. Yeah.
All right. Now, Frank, for those who might not be privy to this handbook, let's deal directly with the solution. Like you explain in Pillar 2, we talk about funding youth. Pillar 3, it helps to provide the space for women also, because they are the one particularly involved in farming business. If we are to deal with the youth aspects, that is the Pillar 2. You see in other countries, they have started to involve themselves, the youth have started to involve themselves in having ponds of fishes at their backyard. Some are involving themselves in poultry, this and that. How exactly is this initiative going to benefit them directly? Because it won't be long before Sierra Leoneans actually start building, even maybe some are even trying to do that. It won't be long before Sierra Leoneans actually start to build their own ponds, growing fishes to actually sell in the market, having poultry places. How exactly is this initiative going to benefit them? That, I believe, is what people want to know.
Yes, I think you're talking about aquaculture, which is very much specified in this document, because it's a priority to the government and also the FAO to see how best we can improve on aquaculture, especially for women and youths. That alone will help generate some income, because you're talking about a pond, we look at it holistically as aquaculture,
okay.
Because it involves a lot of other activities, yeah? And I'm sure, once the implementation plan is out by January, we will be able to look at all those issues and address them appropriately.
Okay. All right. I'm sure that the discussion on the implementation plan is still in discussion. So now it's the time to actually talk, so that when the write-up will be done, all of these things will be included. Yes. Let's move forward a bit in terms of technology. We understand that most times in the provinces, the production of rice would have been very much easier if people there, if farmers there had tractors and other machines to help them. Is this initiative going to cover that end also?
It covers all, but the thing here is, I think there are other traditional systems of farming that have been very beneficial. Okay. Let's go back to the old ages where our grandpas and grandmas don't have access to those facilities or those technologies. They are producing enough to eat, and they have storage. You understand? Sometimes they eat what they produce throughout the year. But for now, certain is not happening. The reason is because there is reduction in production. You know, and mostly before now, maybe a family can do up to 20 acres. And now, for some, it's just 1 or 2 acres. That cannot sustain you for the entire year. So I'm sure if we can really motivate those people, they can move beyond the 1 acre or 2 acre, because especially when they know this is a business. I mean, you can do food production and make business out of it. I'm sure they will be able to increase on their production as well as improve on their production with different type of technology introduced. And for those that will not have access to those technologies, I still know that there's the labor force is there, because they are hard to reach areas that have this labor force that can really, I mean, we need to utilize to make sure they produce enough food within their communities. For Sierra Leone, I see it, let's say, if we're really serious enough, we can be able to achieve some kind of, some level of increase in food production in Sierra Leone. As I was saying this morning, 70% of our income goes out of the country, because we purely depend on imported foodstuff. So let's say if we have produced enough food here, where let's say 70% of our incomes return back into our pocket, that even makes some kind of economic growth. It increases on the GDP, yes, as well as it creates a lot of economic growth within the country, and you know, that will help alleviate poverty among farmers and community as a whole. Yeah,
it will ensure also food security, because less people go to bed hungry. Yes. Thank you very much, Frank Weber, the National Coordinator Consultant, National Action Plan for the United Nations Decade of Family Planning. This is the podium coming to you live from SLBC. Let's quickly go on to another issue. Reminder, you can send your message to participate in the program to the mobile numbers displayed on your screen. Follow us also on Facebook at SLBC Live Channel 31. Now, the Ministry of Information and Communication will host the third CSO's media retreat with all MDAs in the country for 3 days in Kenema District. This is the third retreat, and it will communicate a platform for all MDAs, civil society, and journalists from across the country to meet and reflect on government policies and programs and achievement in fulfilling the medium-term national development plan. This year's theme is Consolidating Democracy, our collective, shared, and patriotic responsibility. Now, to expand our horizon on that, I have in the studio Abubakar Josese, the National Coordinator, Stratcom. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
All right. If we were to, focus on this third retreat, let's talk about. It's always nice to remind ourselves what happened before, so that we'll be able to forge on with clear perspective. What exactly happened on the second retreat you have? What were the discussion profit? What strategies were implemented from that meeting you guys had?
Well, the very first and second, I would say, editions of the media CSO engagements, we had presentations on the implementation of the Midterm National Development Plan, which is informed by the manifesto commitment or the new direction agenda of His Excellency the President since 2018. So most of the presentations were done, but then those were annual achievements. But what makes this one different is that this one is actually going to catalog the achievements since 2018. I mean, since 2019, when we started implementation of the Midterm National Development Plan. So that's why the presentations are going to be done on clusters. If you give me time, I will just go through quickly. Yeah. The presentations will be done in this manner. We have first of all the first one under the human capital development cluster. We have strengthening tertiary and higher education, which will be done by the Ministry of Technical and Higher Education. And then we also have free quality basic and senior secondary school education done by the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. We have healthcare improvements done by the Ministry of Health, lands and housing done by the Ministry of Lands and Housing. And then we have empowering persons with disabilities, addressing migration, Ministry of Social Welfare, and then social protection to be done by the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. And then the next cluster, we look at diversifying the economy and promoting growth. Under that cluster, you have improving the productivity and commercialization of the agriculture sector. That presentation will be done by the Ministry of Agriculture. And then you also have improving the productivity and sustainable management of fisheries and the marine sector. That will be done by the Ministry of Fisheries. And also revitalizing the tourism sector to be done by the Ministry of Tourism. Manufacturing and services means to be done by the Ministry of Trade. And then also we have under that same cluster, we have improving the management of mineral resources, improving the management of oil and gas exploration production. That will be done by the Ministry of Mines. And then under the third cluster, which deals with infrastructural development and economic competitiveness, we have the Presidential Infrastructure Initiative, which an office under the Office of the President. That will be done by the Infrastructure Initiative Office under the Office of the President. And so also we have improving water infrastructure to be done by the Ministry of Water Resources. And then of course we have presentations on energy, transport. They will be done by the respective ministries, you know. And then we have the other cluster here. Under that same cluster, we have information and communications. That will be done by the different sectors under the Ministry of Information and Communication, by the Ministry of Information and Communications. And also, we have the other cluster, cluster 4, governance and accountability for results. Under that one, we have strengthening public financial management to be done by the Ministry of Finance, strengthening public financial management, strengthening decentralization, local governance, who are developing.
Let's
so those are the various clusters.
Exactly. Let's take a few of those, especially the healthcare improvement cluster, addressing migration cluster, the improving the management of oil and gas, and also the improving water availability. We'll start with the healthcare improvement. Over the years, you've told us that you've hosted this thing for 1 or 2 times, and you've been, listening to these ministries while they talk on the work they have done. What exactly, in particular, did the healthcare representative from the ministry, from the government, say about diabetes so far? Because I've had several guests here. They've been talking about how even WHO made some write-up about the fact that we don't have the necessary equipment here in Sierra Leone to deal with diabetes and other diseases, but particularly diabetes, because exactly here we are faced with eating rice every day, and that has the potential to give diabetes. So what exactly did they say to that?
Well,
remind us.
No presentation was particularly done on diabetes. I only had, I think it was a week or so ago that we had the World Diabetes Day. I also listened to 1 or 2 experts. But then I want us to wait for the presentation from the experts, because the Ministry of Health and Sanitation, in their presentation, I'm sure they will deal with all health issues in the country, So let's wait for that presentation. I don't want to preempt what people will be saying.
I thought maybe previously the first and second conference they actually spoke more about that.
No, there was no presentation specifically on diabetes. But I will tell you, in their presentations, as I will recall, they spoke on the ambulance service that had improved, which had increased access to health facilities, and to a large extent reduced maternal mortality. Also, they spoke about increasing the number of peripheral health units, rehabilitation done to major referral hospitals across the country, distribution of drugs in medical supply agencies, distribution of drugs on a quarterly basis. most of these things. And quite recently, we've had the hospital on wheels, the mobile health clinic. I'm sure they will be
which is
presenting on
doing
that.
miracle in
The impact it has had to residents in hard to reach communities. They definitely will be presented. So over the years, they've been actually presenting on their yearly achievements. But as I said earlier on, this one, all of the MDAs that will be presenting, they will actually be cataloging the achievements in the past 4 years. You understand? Of this government, His Excellency the President in particular. Yeah.
So let's direct our attention, since they will be presenting all what they have done for the past 4 years. When you actually sit there and listen to them while they talk about the things they've done, do you have any prerogative to actually tell them to focus on any particular areas, or you just listen to them and direct them on something else?
Well, we are just creating the platform. This is a national platform, basically for to enable us reach out to the public on the implementation of the Midterm National Development Plan. So we are just creating a platform for the MDAs, because they are the ones implementing the policies under the Midterm National Development Plan. So they will be speaking to these issues. But then this one, the engagement is actually meant for the media and CSOs. They are the ones who the presentations will be done to, and then after which they have the opportunity to ask questions, no matter how critical those questions may be, for further clarifications. So we expect that at the end of the day, the media people and CSOs, being the voice of the masses, they'll be able to actually take the information to people. That's why we carefully did our selection to ensure that we have a national spread of the participants, so that at the end of the day, we hope the information will reach to citizens in every corner of this country. So they will be listening to the presentations, they will ask their questions, they will bring up issues, because the experts will be there. We expect these MDAs to take their teams there, the various experts in the various areas of their implementation, so that they'll actually be able to respond to the questions that will be coming from the participants.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We hope to get you back after you've actually listened to all of them, to talk about their presentation.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much. Abubakar Josese, the National Coordinator, Strategic Communication. I'll remind you again, this is The Podium, coming to you live from your national broadcaster, SLPC. I'm Julian Koma. Let's quickly go ahead to another issue. After long deliberation at the Conference of Parties 27th meeting in Cairo, Egypt on loss and damage compensation, which refers to the harm caused by human-generated climate change, the 2-week-long conference has finally reached an agreement that has been applauded as a possible defining moment that recognizes the huge inequities of climate crisis. The milestone achievement is seen as a win for Africa and developing nation, as the talks ended with a significant deal on Africa's most cherished climate goal, which is a global fund for loss and damage. Now, this afternoon I have in the studio David Aliu, civil society activist, who is here to talk about that issue. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Kroma. Thank you. Good afternoon, viewers. COP27.
Yes, let's. I know you have a lot to say about COP27. Let's start first. It is ended. And I think it's, like I said in my intro, it's really a defining moment for
Africa.
Other developing countries like Sierra Leone. They've agreed to actually have this global fund for loss and damage. I know it's but one thing I was not sure of, is there a particular amount? Because like I had Oswald Hensels in the previous Good Morning Sierra Leone, he was posing that we should have I think 2 trillion should be given to Africa as compensation. How much did we get? Is there a tag on this global fund for loss and damage?
As it is now, it is pledges. And what has been the challenge has, from previous COPs, taken from Paris COP21, which is the Paris Agreement, to Glasgow, which was COP26 in Scotland, to this one. Developing countries, industrialized countries have pledged before this time $100 billion. Yeah, annually. That amount was what that they pledged that they should be providing to developing countries, including Africa and other countries, to address the issue of climate change. But as COP27 ended, that pledge has not yet been met. Commitment has not been made. You understand? They committed, but disbursement has been a challenge. Before this time, there are funding windows in terms of climate change effects, but access to those funding for developing countries has been a challenge. Yeah, this particular one that some people are saying is a success as a result of the agreement is the loss and damage funding. It's a separate funding from the previous fundings from the previous agreement. There is funding for adaptation and mitigation. In this COP27, they have agreed, some countries contributed up to $230 million annually that will be provided to Africa countries to address the issue of climate change and other environmental issues. Yeah. So for some of us as activists now, our concern is, since COP has started, we are now in COP27. There has been series of promises, series of commitments. Have they adhered to those commitments? What are the progress? For instance, let's narrow it down to, for instance, the Meteorological Agency, which is charged with the responsibility of early warning. Because one of the major activities of the meteorological agencies is to send out early warning messages, do activities that will inform citizens about the effect of climate change. For instance, they are in charge of ensuring that we have weather stations all over the country, and which will serve as a means of informing us in terms of weather conditions in the country. Yeah, are they up to the task? They are challenged with resources. For the past 5 years, they have promised them resources, which, as we sit here, they have not received those resources. As a country, we have negotiators. As a continent, we have people that represent us to go and negotiate. The past 2 weeks was not just an ordinary meeting. It is a meeting where the world leaders go and meet, discuss issues that they should address. And within that meeting also, we have representatives from all over the world that are climate experts that sit and negotiate on thematic issues in relation to addressing climate change. So that is why the conference catered for over 45,000 attendants that we are at Egypt. Yeah. For Sierra Leone, we have our representatives there. We don't know whether there were other CSOs or whatever. But for Africa, through PACJA, they were able to sponsor per country one focal person to attend. Somebody represented us at COP27. Every year, the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance is a civil society continental alliance that has a broad base of CSOs at Africa level that represented. The other regions also do have. So our concern as Africa is, we have been hearing so much of promises. And that is why we deem the COP27 as the Africa Conference, Africa Cup of Parties, that we address the issue of Africa and other least developing countries, taking into consideration the South America countries, the islands that are almost submerging now. How will they overcome some of those disasters that they affect them? So for us, the issue of loss and damage is a welcome news. As civil society, we appreciate it, but we need actions now. What about the other promises that have been made before this time?
Exactly where I'll add on to now. As you've explained, there were other promises, like you rightly said also. Now, the meteorological agency is supposed to be enhanced or given equipment to actually forecast the weather. You see how we are still having rains even in November. As expected, we should be filled with heavy cold winds, the harmattan as we call it. But we don't even know exactly what's happening now. So now, what they've been doing is giving promises upon promises till we have reached the 27th. Now they've given another promise that you yourself don't think is something very visible. And they have the large industries who pump lots of dirty air into the atmosphere.
Sure.
Isn't it time, even maybe the next COP 28th, COP 28, to actually hold these countries to ransom, to actually tell them to force these institutions, these industries, to actually pay an additional amount so that we will be able to fight the climate change? That could be a possible suggestion that you guys, the activists, could put on them.
Those are position papers that we have been giving them over the years. Even this COP27, it was part of the position papers that we presented to them. Loss and damage is just a minimal issue of addressing the effect of climate change, right? So the issue of addressing those challenges, we have been presenting it to them. But we need concrete actions now. Concrete actions in terms of accessing the resources. Will you believe it that for us, even as a country, there are some funding windows for us to access those funds as a country? It's a challenge from the ministries, departments, and agencies that are charged with the responsibility of addressing climate change and environmental issues. Accessing those funds for them as a country is a challenge. You understand? So that is why we are saying it's not just going over there, sit for 2 weeks, discuss, speak all the big English. We need actions. What will really happen on ground? That is what we want to see. For instance, my community in PODIUM, as a result of the effect of climate change, there is now sea level rise. Our islands are submerging. You understand? What will happen to those people? We have this issue of the motome. People suffered. That is what loss and damage is for. When do we access that fund to compensate those people who lost their loved ones, who lost properties? When will they access those funds? Out of these meetings, they said the first meeting will be held in March. That in March, that is the time they will now start to develop an action plan. So before moving from March to June, November, we are also in another COP28.
We'll continue to stay with us in the program. David Aliyu, civil society activist. I know there are lots of things that you have to say about the COPs, but we'll talk on them very soon. I remind you again, this is the Podium coming to you live from SLBC. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Podium. The Ministry of Health and Sanitation, in collaboration with World Health Organization in Sierra Leone, are observing November 17th to the 24th as Antimicrobial Awareness Week, raising concern about the dangers tagged with the increasing intake of antibiotic drugs, which is fastly resulting to resistance in treatment in humans, animals, and environment. The intake of antibiotics is alarming both in humans and in animals, which has resulted in antimicrobial resistance, which occurs when bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites no longer respond to medicine, hence causing common infection, harder to treat, and increasing the risk of disease spreading. Now, to talk more on that, I have in the studio Ishmael Jalal, Deputy AMS Lead, Connaught Hospital. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon.
Now, from my intro, I've gleaned, and I'm sure my viewers have also tried to understand, that the excessive intake of antibiotics is not good. But what we were previously known to be doing is taking antibiotics all the time because we think it helps you. Exactly, expand our horizon on how exactly do you guys determine, as a medical practitioner, how do you determine what exactly or when exactly to give antibiotics to people?
Okay, thank you so much. as you've just said in the introduction, the world is suffering from what we call antimicrobial resistance. Not only talking about antibiotics, but antifungals, anti-parasite medications. And resistance has occurred because these microorganisms that do invade humans, they are now withstanding attacks from the antimicrobial agent, the medicines that we take. And if you look at it, there's a global problem. Globally in 2019, the death attributed just only on antimicrobial resistance was 1.27 million people. When you combine the deaths of HIV and AIDS and even tuberculosis combined, it's more than those deaths. So it's a global problem. And even coming to Sierra Leone, the burden is there. There's so much research has shown that antimicrobial resistance is in Sierra Leone and it's part of us, and it's a problem that the world is fighting. It's a big danger that we all need to come about and fight. And to your question, when you talk about antimicrobial resistance, there are so many reasons that have led to resistance. What are some of these reasons? One, overuse of antibiotics, inappropriate use of this antimicrobial agent, underdose. If you are prescribed a medicine, maybe you're in the hospital, doctor prescribed for a 7 days course, you just take 1 dose, you feel better, you don't continue. Overuse of this drug and taking drugs out of in prescription, and also resistance from this microorganism. All of these reasons have led to resistance. And so looking at the whole issue, as I said earlier, it's a global problem and we all need to fight it. And that's why in the 65th World Health Assembly, they decided to use this month, November, between the 17th to 24th, as a means to raise awareness about antimicrobial resistance through communication, education, and training, because we need to educate the public and let them know about the danger of this antimicrobial, let them know the danger about these antibiotics. And you ask the question, when should a person take antibiotics? And we've seen that a lot of myth is being going on in terms of the use of antibiotics, especially the ladies. They believe in this myth that when they have their menstrual cycle, they should take antibiotics. It's a wrong practice. After even unprotected sex, they take antibiotics. It's a wrong practice. Those are practices that we should refrain from, because these are the reasons that are led to this resistance. Common cold, for example, I have a common cold. I don't need an antibiotic. So you don't need to take an antibiotic for a common cold. And so the only time you take an antibiotic when you go to the hospital, you've been diagnosed, doctors send you to the lab, the laboratory has confirmed that you have a bacterial infection or whatever infection you have, then you will take an antibiotic. So these are the reasons why you take antibiotics. You should not be taking antibiotic inappropriately when you are not given a prescription. So as I said, these two mites are the major thing that we'll find out that people are misusing this antibiotic. They take antibiotics for common cold, which is very wrong. They take antibiotic after their menstrual cycle, it's very wrong. They are not cleaning anything. And also they take antibiotic, say, after sex. Antibiotics or antimicrobials are not contraceptives. They will not prevent you of not having pregnancy. So all of these reasons have led to resistance that we are fighting today.
All right. I'm glad you actually described that as antibiotics are not something you take after sex. But another area people take, or rather it's kind of linked. Are antibiotics, allergic? Can someone actually grow allergies from antibiotics? If someone takes antibiotics and they have a condition and they are allergic to these antibiotics, it might lead them to suffer some sort of sickness, and which will lead them to death, which, as you've rightly said, is why we have such a huge, in millions of people dying from antibiotics. Can people be allergic to antibiotics?
So let me just correct it. They are not dying from antibiotic, but they are dying from antimicrobial resistance.
Okay.
When these microorganisms can no longer withstand this medication, so that is why they are dying. It's resistant, but they are not dying from the antibiotics. So the antibiotics is not actually killing them, but due to the resistance that these antimicrobials are developed. For example, let me take you. Growing up, we all know that we used to take chloroquine as a malaria medication. It was very common, but now chloroquine is no longer effective. We are using the antimycin-based combination for malaria. So these are some of the reasons. And you're talking about allergy. Let me say this: every medicine has a side effect. Every medicine. And like in taking antibiotic, we consider 4 things: the right 4 R's. Talking about the right patient. Is this patient good enough to take antibiotic? Talking about the right dose. is this dose enough for this patient, or is this an overdose or underdose? Talking about the right duration, how long should this patient should be on antibiotic? So these are all the things we consider before an antibiotic is being dispensed to a particular patient.
Okay, you said that the antibiotics do not exactly actually kill people. It's the microbial resistance. Exactly. Well, let's get to the excessive usage of it, because from what I've read, the excessive usage of taking antibiotics will actually destroy the flora of your stomach, which would lead to leaky gut syndrome. Is that not true? Because sometimes we read so much thing in the internet, some of it might not be true.
No, why
I'm glad you're here
that
today to
statement?
correct
Because
us.
why I correct that statement? Because now we are saying that antibiotics are killing. Maybe a lame person will just go to the hospital and doctor have done the diagnosis and they prescribe antibiotics. So, oh, that guy said no, we should not take antibiotics. So that's why I corrected it. There should be a rational use. Talking about the right patient, right dose, and right duration. And as you've likely said, our body has the normal flora. Those are normal bacteria that fight for us in case of any infection. And overdose, like you say, it's like as I said earlier, what I've led to is that underdose and overdose. You can't be on antibiotic for more than 2 weeks. That is improper. So overdose can lead to this resistance and causing more infections. And when you have resistance, you spend more time in the hospital, you spend more money, and also you'll be able to spread the infections to other people and leading to even death.
Okay, thank you very much for explaining to us that. I'm sure lots of people have understood and they'll take that explanation and spread it to other people. But as we are, commemorating this antimicrobial week, what exactly are you doing? Are you going to the provinces? Because now that you've explained to me, I myself, I read, but it's very nice that you're explaining to me now. My understanding has been expanded. Are you going to the provinces to expand this? They are rising also on the excessive intake of, antibiotics.
So this week is being celebrated together the Ministry of Health and Sanitation together with its partners, and so these are one of the things we are doing to make sure that we raise awareness about the use of misuse of antimicrobials, not only antibiotics. So we've been doing this every year to make sure that we raise awareness, and I'm sure we'll be targeting the other provinces and other areas to see how this message can reach each and every community.
All right, so thank you very much, Ishmael Jallo, Deputy AMS Lead, Connaught Hospital. This is again the podium coming to you live from SLBC. Now let's pivot our camera again to my good man, Frank Weber. Now let's talk about this plan, this action plan, as we were talking about previously. Now you've explained to us, once the proper document is out, and we'll know exactly how we'll be able to implement strategies to help youth. And there are several pillars here in the handbook itself. I want you to now tell us exactly in terms of technology, because that is one part that will enhance, even though you've made some allusion that our previous way we used to keep or store or plant our product actually works, but the help of technology will go leap further to helping us have lots of food and food security in Sierra Leone. Let's talk about the machines that will be coming to Sierra Leone, if any.
Yes, I'm sure you realize that the president launched they went to the storehouse very recently and launched some machineries at the Ministry of Agriculture storehouse at Kisi. Yes. Those are equipments that definitely we've been yearning for a very long time, especially those harvesters, because the key challenge here is you can cultivate a very big portion of land, but there is most times problem with harvesting. So I think we have some harvesters now on the ground that can help with harvesting, and as well as we have some tractors. It depends to how, I don't know which mechanisms the ministry is currently going to put together and making sure those equipment reach the right people at the right time, because your timing also is very important when it comes to production. Because you cannot, for some ecology, you have to make sure you start earlier. Like for instance, you start maybe in February or so, but some you start in April. It depends. So but you cannot take specific machineries to some ecology in June, July, because then the soil will be so much watery. The machines won't work effectively
Properly.
well,
Eh,
or plow effectively well.
Exactly. You see, the amount of knowledge you have about these machines, I'm not sure that I have that. That means the people in the provinces don't have that. So, are they going to be tutored or lectured or given classes on how these machines work so that it will be helping them sustainably for the foreseeable future?
One good thing, as I said earlier, is the youth. They are still youth in those communities, and I think there's a time we need to train those youths in the use of those technologies. Once we train them, they can be able to, because they are living within the community. One thing that, even in terms of extension service, because we have a huge gap that relates to managing farms within those communities, because they don't have extension service. A bunch of our farmers in this country don't have extension services, and the Ministry of Agriculture have an extension unit. So what we have been asking and requesting from the government is to make sure they improve on the service delivery that relates to extension workers within those communities. So probably, even if it comes to a point of training some youths that just have this basic education, because probably they will be more happy living around those communities, giving out the service to their own people. Because I'm not shy to say this. Most times when people go to universities, you have maybe your first degree or so, to send them out in the farming community to provide the extension service is somehow real difficult.
Right.
So why not we make use of the opportunities or those youths within those communities, train them so they can serve their own people. You understand? Because I'm sure if we really train them very well, they have all the basics, they'll be able to be closer to the people and give them the necessary service.
All right, I thank you very much, Frank Weber. I do hope that this indeed helps help the youth in Sierra Leone. He's Frank Weber, the National Coordinator Consultant, National Action Plan for the United Nations Decade of Family Farming, 2021 to 2030. Let's pivot the camera to you again, my good man, Abubakar Joseph, for second round. So is there any particular expectations from this, or rather out of the box expectation from this institution, ministries also? Is there something that you're particularly looking for? That is, of course, they're going to be giving you what they've done, their achievement, but are you looking for something in particular also?
Well, Mr. Weber was just speaking on the issue of the machinery. That's what I know he's interested in. So the Ministry of Agriculture we definitely speak to that. But I'm very much aware that we have machinery rings in every district headquarter town that are being managed by this equipment. They are managed by the private sector, because now we have a public-private partnership. So that's just what the fact remains that some people do not have the correct information. So that's why we organize these programs to ensure that the listener anywhere in the country understands exactly what is going on in the governance. They understand how programs, policies of government are being implemented, and that's the reason why we are using the media and civil society as a platform, because they actually speak on behalf of the people. So at the end of the day, we actually expect to get all the necessary information from these presentations. From all the institutions, what they've been doing over the years, and once we leave there, we'll be able to ensure that information trickles down to the last man, and they'll be well informed as to how things have been going over the past 4 years.
All right, thank you very much. Just to say, the national coordinator.
Please let me just
One more
give
thing you want to include?
Yes, the Honorable Vice President, Dr. Mohamed Juliet Jallo, will deliver the keynote address. I just needed to make that. And this event will, the venue for the event is the Kenema City Hall in Kenema. Yes.
All right, thank you again, Joseph Say, National Coordinator, Strategic Communications Unit. And we go over to you, my climate change activist. Now, as you're saying, we are on our 27th COP and we'll be getting to our 28th soon. And it's all talk, no walk. So when our back are pushed against the corner, what are we to do?
Well, as a country, we have ministries, departments, and agencies that represented us. All we want to say to them is let them come back, sit, engage citizens, engage relevant stakeholders in ensuring that what we are supposed to do as a country to address in-house some of those mitigating factors, right? For instance, in terms of adaptation, at community level, there are steps community people need to take to adapt to climate change effect. How are we engaging them to ensure that those actions are being taken? In terms of mitigation, there are steps citizens are supposed to take. The issue of climate change is not just about government. It's about every individual. Our way of life needs to change. We need to address issues as they come. So for us as activists, we are calling on every Sierra Leonean to come on board, support government, be with government in addressing some of those issues. However, those charged with the responsibilities at those ministries, departments, and agencies to ensure that they properly engage the necessary stakeholders in addressing some of those issues, right? That is why we are saying the Ministry of Environment that is charged with the responsibility of environmental management in this country should ensure that they organize sessions wherein community people we know participate in ensuring that we address climate change issues. The issue of tree planting is a mitigation and adaptation measure. How do we ensure that as a country we involve citizens in the issue of tree planting? Adaptation, how are communities benefiting from it? The loss and damage, when the global community put the right structures in place, we believe our government also will work towards that structure. So all we are saying is, as civil society, whatever actions they may have agreed on, let it filter down at community level.
Right.
And for us as a country, we should ensure that we have a national document, which is the nationally determined contributions. That is the national plan that we put together as a country in addressing climate change. Let's ensure that whatever resources we have, we make reference to that document in rolling out our climate change activities.
Thank you again, David Aliu, a civil society activist on climate change. Just before we go, I'd like one round for my good man Ishmael Jallo, the Deputy AMS Lead, Connaught Hospital. Now, as you have said that most ladies take these antibiotics as prevention and sexual prevention, but that is wrong. In an instance where that has been their life, they have been taking it every time, what exactly will stopping restore their flora stomach back to its current strong potential, or do they have to be taking something else that will help them restore their immune system to normal?
Well, basically, I'm not here for clinical, I'm more of public health to just raise awareness about this antimicrobial resistance and talking about the dangers. Like for me, if any lady that is this habit, just stop. Because what you're doing now is you are endangering your life. The time you need an antimicrobial agent to prevent an illness, you're already used to it. So we want the ladies to stop that practice, that take antibiotics as contraceptives or antibiotics to flush their system. They're the one that have coined that term, one for flush the system. So I'm just saying to them, let them stop.
So if they want an advanced medical service or medical talk, they'll have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ishmael Jallo, the Deputy AMS Lead, Connaught Hospital. And this is where we end the program this afternoon. But just before we go, I'd like to read you a quote of the day, and it came from Laurie Descheny, an inspirational speaker. And it says, "You don't have to be positive all the time. It's perfectly okay to feel sad, angry, annoyed, frustrated, scared, and anxious. Having feeling doesn't make you a negative person. It makes you human." This has been the Podium, and I am Julian Kuruma. Have a nice day.
Thank you.